Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be showing you how to change the firmware for the Frsky X10 and X10S to OpenTX. Now if you watch my last video on this transmitter you will have seen that I was running OpenTX, and now you can see that I have got the Frsky operating system back on here. So yes, I'm going to show you how to change it to OpenTX, but also how to back everything up and also reverse it if you want to go back to the Frsky operating system. And why might you want to do that? Well, the Frsky operating system will boot the transmitter whether you have a SD card in there or not, and the OpenTX firmware for the X10 and X10S requires you to have information on the micro SD card for it to even boot up. So you might actually prefer to use the Frsky operating system that comes with it. Me personally, I prefer the OpenTX because it's similar to the Tyrannus and I don't like change. So let's go over to the computer and see what you need to do. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is download OpenTX, and I'll put a link in the below for everything that you need to download. So if we scroll down here, you've got the Windows installer, and we've also got Mac, Linux and Ubuntu. And then you're going to want to download the SD card content as well. And at the same time, if you haven't got it already, which you probably have if you're in this hobby, you're going to want the Zadig USB installation tool. Now this makes it look overly complicated. It's not. It's very easy. I'll show you the steps in this video. And I've also noticed if you go on the Frsky website you can actually download the data flash and also the latest firmware on here as well, but we won't worry about that because I'm going to show you how to back everything up with everything that you have with the transmitter. So once all those things are downloaded, I'm just going to come out of this here. So I've got OpenTX companion there, and we've got Zadig open. The first thing that you're going to want to do is turn on your X10 and then plug a USB connector into the back of it, and it's going to take just a few seconds there. And if you've got a micro SD card already plugged into it, then you should get two boxes popping up. One is the data flash, so it's got a built-in 16 megabyte data flash, and the other the micro SD card content. However, if it's a brand new X10, mine didn't come with a micro SD card, so you might just get this coming up here. You're going to want to copy this because this is the Frsky OS information on the data flash. Copy this and just put it into a file. I've already done that somewhere here, so yeah, copied it. That's for when we flash it back. And then if you put a micro SD card into the X10, then this would be blank, and what you want to do is take the SD card contents and then paste that into here because it's going to need some of that information when OpenTX boots up. Okay, so now I'm just going to minimize both of those things. So the next thing that you want to do is unplug the USB connector from the transmitter, and then you want to plug the USB cable back in without turning the transmitter on, and nothing will happen, and nothing will happen on your computer as well. However, if we go to Zadig down here and then we want to list all devices and then come down here, we should have a STM32 bootloader, and some of you guys might recognize this from your Betaflight stuff. It's like DFU mode. And at this point, this is where you want to just hit reinstall driver just to make sure that it's got the correct driver. And that's it. That's all that you need to do for this. The next thing that we want to do is read the firmware so that we can back up what is on the X10. So I think that is this option here, read firmware from radio. So if you click that there, and we just call it FROS, you can call it anything there really, and then save that, that's going to save what is a bin file. So actually if I come down on here and then on here, there we go, save the bin file, and later we can use that to flash everything back. But for now we want to flash OpenTX to it. So if we go to the little cog on here, and then you select the X10 or X10S up here, and then you can select some of these. I've got PPM US selected and Lua on here as well, and then enable automatic backup. I've got mode 1, you're going to want mode 2. Of course you can change that later in the settings, but yeah. And I've selected TAER for my default channel order because it's what I'm used to. Got these things ticked down here as well, and there's nothing in particular on here that you have to tick. You can copy what I've got here. You know, you can show the splash screen when OpenTX loads up and things like that, and you know, use the model wizard and your backup folder, etc. And then you don't need to touch simulator settings really. So if I press OK here, we can now download the latest firmware. So download firmware, and then I'll just save it in that same folder. Now it's going to ask me, do I want to write the firmware to the radio? So I'm going to select yes, and then I'm going to do write to TX, and then it'll start flashing. If it doesn't flash, you need to go into Zadig and make sure that you have installed the driver again, and that's going to take some time. So I'll just speed that up. Okay, now that has done, I can just close out of this. Now, they do recommend every time you disconnect the USB cable, you eject it properly in Windows. I should have done that before. So if we go into here, and if I just click on here, then I can press eject like that, and they'll say it's safe to remove. So if I unplug the USB cable, and
welcome to OpenTX.
You can hear that it says OpenTX. Just while I'm here, I'll just plug the connector back in so that you can see the contents of the SD card, because one thing that I found that you can't do is change the background, but you can change the background manually. So on OpenTX, it actually prompts you to use it as a USB joystick or USB storage then, so different than the Horus. So that might take just a few seconds to pop up. You see, and then if we go into themes, and then I think it is default, it's this one here, I think. So if I open this, you can see it's my background, and if we take a look at the properties, it does have to match there. So if we just take a look at the pixel size, so it needs to be that, and you replace it with the original background, and then that's how you can go in there and change it and customize it. I wish they had an option for you to do that. I'm sure they will at some point, but yeah, it's very early at the moment at the making of this video, you have to remember. Okay, so just to show you the results, see it's running OpenTX. I'll just turn it off and show you, because you know, this is why you might not want to be using it, and hopefully this micro SD card won't fire across the room. If I try and turn it on now, it'll just say no SD card. So yeah, you have to have a SD card in there. So what I'm going to do now is put another SD card in here, and what I've done is I've copied the contents of the original data flash onto this, and you need to do that in order to restore back the Frsky operating system. So yeah, copy the contents originally, and it might be the case that you can download the data flash contents. There is an extra folder on there though called system, so I haven't tried that, so it's best to back up, I would say. So I'm going to put this in here, and then we can go back onto the computer. Very fiddly, that. There we go. Okay, so the flashing back is a little bit easier. So, as I mentioned, I've copied the contents to the SD card. It's these original ones there that we backed up. So that is now on the SD card and in the SD card slot. And then if I take my USB cable and plug it into the back of the transmitter with the transmitter being turned off, And once again, the transmitter won't do anything, but if we go into Zadig again, then it'll show STM32 bootloader, and I probably don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. So that is that installed there. And then this time, if we go to, I think it's write to, I'm looking for the, there we go, write firmware to the radio. And then if I load this time the bin file that we backed up originally, press open like that, it'll give you a little error, that is fine, and then write to TX. So I'll speed that up for you. Okay, so that has finished, so if we close that and then once again come down here to eject bootloader mode, there we go, eject bootloader, and then we can unplug it from the computer. So there we go, we are back to the start. So if you found this video useful, give it a like, and if there's anything else that you would like me to cover when it comes to the X10, let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.